This is the Super League Timeout Podcast. With your hosts, Michael Hansen-Morris and Jess Smith.
Welcome back to the Super League Timeout Podcast, episode number 9. Michael Hansen-Morris, and back from a work vacation, Jess Smith. Jess, how was last week? A busy week at work, though.
A busy week at work, yes. Much rather be on this podcast than traveling my butt all the way up to Leeds and then all the way back the next day. So, but no, it was good. We had a training thing and it was quite useful, actually.
Good. And obviously could have done with being in Leeds about 2 days earlier for the games that were last week in Leeds, or 4 days later and stayed for Leeds Giants, but we'll make do.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not the bigwig yet. So ask me again in like 5 years when I'm, running the company or whatever.
But this is, as we said, episode number 9. And the first one we've given a title to of Reaching New Heights. And a couple of teams definitely did that this weekend, along with our special guest that we'll get on to a little bit later in the episode. So we will start, as always, with the weekend wrap. And we'll start on the dynamic men's Super League side. And talking of big games, yes, we had one off the bat. The good old rivalry between Essex and Mallory Eagles. And the Mallory Eagles coming out 3-0 victors at the Essex Sport Arena. No Jacob Kern again for Essex, as Mallory took the game in those straight sets. 2 tight sets to start with, though, just 23-25, 25-27, and then Mallory pulling away at the end, 18-25, and a big win for Mallory off the back of some struggles, but wins they've had in the league so far.
Yeah, really great performance and exciting to see what they can do. Unbeaten so far in the league. So can they carry this on? Does this mean that they're going to finish top of the table at the end of the season? Maybe.
It'll definitely be something we can look at. Both teams passed exceptionally well in this game. In fact, ball control on Sunday in both games at the Essex Sport Arena really good. Both teams passing over a 2-4, but Essex passing a 2-4-8 wasn't enough. It was Hassan Farhat leading the way with 10 kills, 9 digs on 22 swings. And for Mallory, Ben Kwame stepping up, 12 kills, 3 errors on 27 attempts, along with 8 digs. And then Ryan Dixon, his second appearance for Mallory, a couple of aces, 3 kills on 6 swings, but passed a 2-7-3 off the bench on 15 attempts. So kind of a big boost for Mallory, that, Jess, that they've got another option at the outside. And Ryan, obviously, he's got that experience, but that's going to be a potential big addition for Mallory if they can add that third passer into the unit.
Yeah, definitely. Because, service pressure is so big in the Dynamic Men's Super League. So anything they can do to shore up that passing unit is going to be massive for them.
And then we'll talk about the game that started the weekend off up at Leeds, as Leeds Scores took a set off the league favourites. The title favourites are London Giants. It was 23-25, 25-23, the opening 2 sets. 2 really tight sets, the Root Course Academy, but then London Giants pulling through at the end of the game, 17-25, 16-25. And we'll talk about Giants in a little bit, Jess, but another big performance by Leeds. I talked last week that, yes, they lost 3-0 to Mallory, but they took sets into the 20s and now taking a set off London Giants. Another big feather without Nelson Moraga in the lineup.
Yeah, they'll be really pleased with that. We talked about this last week and I said, I expected this to be a 3-0 loss for Leeds. So to come out swinging, this might bode well for them for the rest of the season, because if they can do something other than relying on Nelson, it gives them, other opportunities and a chance potentially to beat some of the other teams that maybe are further from the top of the table.
Yeah, it was Pal Osawaya stepping up again with 11 kills, and Max Makowski with a breakout game hitting. He ended up with the team high 12 kills on just 22 attempts, 5 errors, but still hitting 324 the game. As for Giants, Daniil Povarenko back into the lineup, and he hit 400 on 18 kills on 35 swings. And maybe a discussion point we'll talk about in the upcoming Super League Live at Crystal Palace, Jess. Potentially a setting dilemma coming up for London Giants. Another big outing for Diego Tamburini off the bench. 14 assists on 25 attempts. So potential selection headaches for Michal Stoiv in that setting position, because we know Tamburini's got a lot of experience, but he's obviously challenging Griffin Pfizer, the captain of Giants.
Yeah, it's tough because, I mean, we saw Tamburini make, a massive impact when he came on as a substitute last season as well, playing for Polonia. So to see him come in and make this level of impact is not overly surprising. I think ultimately it's going to come down to the question of, can they shift their block around the Giants? Can they shift their block around to cover for the fact that Tamburini is an undersized player? And if they can come up with a defensive system that works, regardless of whether he's backcourt or front court, then, that gives them a lot of potential opportunity to change up the way that they're running their offense at the moment, because it is, their two setters do have a very different style.
Yeah, indeed. And Giants spreading it around, being on a doubleheader, 6 players with 6 or 7 kills, backing up Poverenko. But as we said, credit to Leeds. They were also 22-20 up in set 1, so we weren't that far away from a potential points dropping. But one team that didn't pick up any points on the road were the University of Nottingham men, as they struggled up in the northeast against the Newcastle Knights, losing in straight sets 25-16, 25-21, 25-23. And Newcastle had a monster game, past the 2.48, hit 351, Jess, and ultimately Nottingham just couldn't put enough service pressure on the Knights to really cause some damage and break the rhythm of Sam Shenton's team.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about Newcastle before. They have a really good team chemistry. Neil coming back has obviously been quite handy for them. He runs a very dynamic offense, and, having that level of passing performance at 2.48, that's really impressive, because it just gives you that little extra consistency and increases your chances of winning each point. Because the more options that you have, the more difficult it is for your opponents to set up, a fully closed block. And any small gap or slightly unformed block, they haven't quite gotten there in time to press. Any advantage you can give to your attackers is enough to make an impact on the game, and you can see that through the scoreline.
Yeah, Newcastle sided out at 77% for the match, 81% in both set 1 and 2. And in the end, Nottingham ended up with 0 aces on the day, 16 service errors, and a big difference in the score. It was James Ledbury and Ollie Tuck leading the way for the Knights with 11 kills each. Ledbury super efficient on just 19 swings. And it was Rob Morgan with 9 kills for Nottingham, and Connell Kane, 5 kills on 7 swings through the middle. But in the end, that service pressure, despite Nottingham having just 6 hitting errors in set 2 and 3 combined, ended up losing both those in tight fashion. And they're now going to have a bit of a task on their hands to try and claw some ground up on the top 4. And then our final for Freddie Fairbairn, chance to redeem themselves. So these two sides, Newcastle and Nottingham, meet in Bucks on Wednesday. So that'll probably be a little bit of relief for Nottingham with a bounce back opportunity. Different competition, yes, but see the same side back-to-back times.
Yeah, I mean, it almost gives you a bit of a do-over. Yes, different competition, completely agree. But, these teams playing each other 4 times a year instead of twice, at least, gives them that extra opportunity to learn the behaviors of the other teams. And Nottingham will be looking to come out and, correct some of the issues that they had at the weekend, particularly around the lack of aces and the number of service errors, because I know Freddie will be wanting his guys to be aggressive. And we saw, even just a couple of weeks ago, I think Nottingham went an entire match with, I don't know, 0 or maybe less than 3 service errors, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
So that's a massive turnaround for them. So they've got to figure out a way to keep that serving consistency. And this will be that time when they, go in and look to capitalize on that in a game scenario.
Yeah, and a win for Nottingham would clinch home court advantage for the playoff run up until the final. Newcastle needing to find a result, and Nottingham to drop some points on the last day of the season in Bucks away at Durham, which could be a tough ask depending on who Durham have back. But Newcastle, one win wasn't quite enough for them, Jess. They found the second on Sunday. This one going all the way to the distance against the London Giants, who made the trip up from Leeds to Newcastle. 25-19, 24-26, 25-22, 17-25. And the Knights pulling off the big victory in front of a very impactful home crowd, 15-10 in the fifth set. And that's a statement victory for the Knights.
Yeah, I think you'll see some teams really struggle on the road and some teams, don't struggle as much. But having home court advantage, for Newcastle, I know that they would have had, a good sized crowd and there would have been a lot of shouting going on, and that's really great. But looking at what London Giants did this weekend, you wonder, will they always struggle on the road, or is this a one-off? And if they are struggling on the road, they need to figure out a way to get around that. But massive performance from Newcastle this weekend in both of their matches. They were on fire, really.
Yeah, indeed. And this was a bit more of a defensive battle this game. Both teams, Newcastle hit 159, Giants just 134. Combined 87 assists, but errors, both teams nearly getting 60, which isn't horrible in a five-setter, but definitely some tidying up to do. But it's very interesting that neither team found much of an offensive rhythm in this game. And maybe that's the first time we've seen since opening weekend a bit of a chink in Giants' armor, that they've not been efficient finding kills.
Yeah, they need to figure out a way to put the ball away. They're a tall team, they do well in the block, generally speaking, but if they can't put the ball away, or if on the day, Newcastle's defense just happened to be so good that they kept everything up, it's a struggle to do much against that. You can be creative, but you can't come up with a new shot suddenly on a day in the middle of a match.
Yeah, it was Isaac Gibbs having a huge game for Newcastle. 8 kills, no errors on 11 swings. 1 solo block, 7 assisted blocks, and 2 aces, really helping pace what was a team effort by Newcastle, including one of the sets of the season that's already up on Super League socials. Neil Ray swan diving away over the top of his libero, Angus Hendricks. And again, it was Poverenko pacing London Giants, the only one into double-digit kills in the 5-set match. 13 kills, but did come on 34 swings with 7 errors. And Hamza actually through the middle, 8 kills on 15 swings and 4 blocks as well. So some work to do for Michał Stoer's team as they build towards that Super League live. But now we'll flip over
We'll have
to the Mari. Sorry, Jess, go.
I was just going to say, we'll have to see what happens with Poverenko, because he's only just come back, and to have 2 massive games back to back and be, the workhorse for them, are they going to put too much pressure on him? And is he going to, feel that and be out again? Or is he fully back?
Yeah, we'll see. Obviously, they played this weekend. We'll touch upon that a little bit later. But we'll now flip over to the Mari Women's Super League, and we'll stay in the Northeast with the game on Saturday, as the Newcastle Knights picked up a big victory against Dark Star Derbyshire in 4 sets, 25-23, 13-25 set number 2 for Derby, but then 25-19, 25-16. And it was a kind of a tale of good and bad for both teams. A lot of inconsistencies. Both teams really struggled to pass the ball in this game. Obviously, Newcastle had to make some lineup changes, but kind of probably the worry for both these teams, just despite the result, is kind of those inconsistencies. Really 2 good sets, 2 bad sets by both teams.
Yeah, and they're going to have to figure out a way to be more consistent, and some of that will be passing, and some of that will just be attack efficiency. But we've seen this, with both of these squads before, where they do have those very up and down performances, and particularly for Dark Star, they have to be efficient in every set that they play, because they have, a limited roster. They don't have loads of changes they can make at every single match. So being highly efficient from the start of each match is the way that they're going to gather the maximum number of points that they can throughout the season. Newcastle, that's a fairly young team. They have a lot of new players. I think they're still potentially, embedding themselves, but we've mentioned it a few times. It's a short season, so they need to figure out a way to also be, more consistent straight away.
Yeah, it was Hajar Alawani as always leading the way for Derby. 3 aces, 12 digs, 12 kills, but that came on 38 swings. And Alice Brand really struggled, just 4 kills, but 6 errors for Alice. An uncharacteristic performance. And it was for Newcastle. Renee Kura down the middle, 10 kills, 2 aces, and Jenna Vask with 12 kills. But super impressive for Newcastle because they had to shuffle things around, as we said. No Lauren Howe, no Daisy Borman on the outside. So they moved Caroline McMahon into the outside position, normally the second libero option. Obviously, there's some passing issues early in the game as well. So being able to add a second effectively libero to the passing unit was definitely important. But also, knowing Caroline and when we spoke to her early in the season, Jess, she was probably more delighted to play outside because it meant she got to serve.
Yes. Yeah. I can't lie. As a libero that has played in the US to come over here and not be able to serve, it is kind of sad at times. So completely understand that the joy in playing a different position.
And next up, we'll go to Sunday and we'll go to the Essex Sport Arena. It was a 3-0 win for Mallory men. Not so fast for the Mallory women. They go down to Alex Chinnery and the Essex Rebels women 3-0. The first win ever for Alex Chinnery against Mallory. Obviously, he's got a few against UEL in the past, but finally gets the duck off the back. 25-19, 22-5, 21, 25-19. But Jess, this all came down to late sets. You just look at the score, 19, 21, 19. You go, Essex were comfortable. Well, first set, it was tied 18-all. Second set, Mallory led 19-17. Third set was 15-all. So really huge performance down the end of sets for Essex. Really proud of them to this victory. And that's a big positive to take because last time we saw them at the Essex Sport Arena a couple of weeks ago, they really struggled to close out sets against Durham. So that's a big win for Essex and doing it in the way they did.
Yeah, massive from them. And I'm sure that Alex will be really pleased with the ladies turning themselves around and, putting in those tight performances at the end of each of those sets. Because mentally it can be tough. You get sucked into feeling like you're tied or, playing at the rhythm of your opponent rather than playing at your own rhythm. But obviously they've been able to figure out a way to, take what they're doing and say, right, this is the game plan and we want to win and we're going to show how much we do want to win. So massive for them. But, to say 11 losses on the trot and then they finally turned around and gotten one I know that they'll be super ecstatic about that.
Yeah, and I spoke to Alex briefly after the game. He said it was his best passing game. The stats agree with that. Lena Dupre with 12 kills. But really, the defensive impact made a huge difference. Mallory, their 7 hitters, 4 ended up hitting negative, just 3 positive. Chloe Allen leading the way on that. Obviously, Ari Sierra doing what she does, 13 digs. But huge for Essex to hold some and Mallory hitters to negative and really force Mallory to be a little bit one-dimensional, which is something we've not seen too often over the past few years.
Yeah, I'm really interested to understand what Mallory will do because we've seen them make some quite, serious changes midway through the set or between sets before because they've got so many options. I'm sure that they will take this one as a learning opportunity and, from the next match we'll see something different out of them.
Yeah, and probably they'll be talking a lot about the middles. Mallory middles, 4 kills, 4 errors on 18 swings. But for Essex, led by Hayley Gillifan's 12 kills, had 18 kills, 4 errors on 36 attacks. So a huge difference and something for Mallory to go and address as Mallory or UEL and Essex also square up in Bucks tomorrow with Essex trying to clinch their home court on the women's side and the UEL men trying to clinch home court if they can win at the Essex Sport Arena for the second time in 4 days. And last but not least, it was another big weekend for the Durham Platinets. Jess, we talked about it a couple of weeks ago. They had to come back down to London and complete their South trip for the year, and they did in strong fashion. 6 points, and that started with a 4-set victory over London Lionhearts on Saturday night, 23-25, 26-24, 15-25, 15-25. And a important victory for Durham, Jess, to get that going into Sunday's game. And for London Lionhearts, probably some good signs that they've had some struggles, but to take a set off Durham, we know isn't easy this year.
Yeah, massive here from Durham to come in and have 6 points out of this weekend. We've said a couple of weeks ago they've started to play at the level that we were expecting at opening weekend, and they're continuing to play at that level. You mentioned great signs for Lionhearts to take a set off of them, and I would say yes, completely agree with that. But I will say it is very difficult to play after you've been traveling for 3 or 4 hours. So maybe take that one set that they've taken off of them with a pinch of salt. If Durham were full strength or if they had been at home, would they have dropped that set? Maybe not. But again, it's a league and you have to be able to travel and play. So they've got to figure out a way to stay consistent at all times. But, they pushed it to extra time. It was 26-24 in that second set for Lionhearts to take it. So Lionhearts showing a bit of heart, if you can forgive the pun. And yeah, exactly the type of performance that we want to see from them.
Yeah, there may be a slight concern again, similar to Mallory. Lionheart's really struggling for multiple hitters to get going. As Masha had 13 kills on 51 swings. The other one had 11 kills on 39, but then no one else on the Lionhearts Venarius roster had more than 4 kills over the 4 sets. And for Durham, it was Izzy Decker leading the way, 3 aces, past the 225, and then had 18 kills on 44 swings, and then topped it up with 17 of 69 digs that Durham produced. And they produced on Sunday morning as well, out in West London, as they took on Team SideOut Polonia, 16-25, 19-25, 17-25, and Durham held SideOut to a negative hitting percentage in the end, led by an absolute Durham block party. It was 11 blocks in the game. And for Durham, this defense, Jess, is maybe something we've not talked about enough, but we saw the 69 digs on Saturday. We've seen 11 blocks on the Sunday, holding SideOut to a negative hitting percentage. So really impressive, and maybe something that's gone under the radar in the first half of the season.
Yeah, completely agree. We were expecting there to be a lot of blocking coming out of this Durham women's side because, they're one of the tallest women's teams that we've got in the Super League this season, if not the tallest. They have the skill, they have the experience. We want to see them doing that. And, you mentioned the digs on Saturday. So you can see that even when they're not getting, block kills, they're getting containing touches that their teammates are able to pick up, which is something that we didn't see in that very first match. But now they seem to be playing together much more consistently. And I think the score lines of these 3 sets, just to remind you, that was 16, 19, and 17 that they won the 3 sets by against Team SideOut Polonia, who have consistently been in the Final 4. This is the level of performance that we are expecting to see from Durham, and I'm very much expecting at this point for them to close the season out in the same way. So as things stand, I think that they'll finish top of the table because they're just ridiculously strong.
Yeah, Durham passed a 2-4-2 in this game. Side out percentage in set 1 was 88.2, 78% in set 3. And again, balanced effort. Chloe Thomas this time leading the way, 13 kills on 27 swings, plus 4 solo blocks, 3 assisted blocks. And then side out, as we said, hit negative as a team. It was only Carla Mulli getting going for side out, 11 kills on 33 swings. Alexis Diaz-Infante, Anna Rotala, Anastasia Konvalova, the 3 other pin hitters for side out, all hitting negative in this game. So some work to do for Team SideOut. But now we'll have a little bit more to learn about what's going on in the Team SideOut camp as we bring in our special guest for this week, Carla Mulli. We're delighted to be joined by our guest for this week, the outside hitter for Team SideOut Polonia, Carla Mulli. Carla, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
Obviously, we'll briefly touch upon Sunday. Obviously, a disappointing result against Durham, but just talk about the learning lessons, because it's a lot. As much as the season's long in terms of length, it's a quick season, and you want to kind of bounce back at the next Super League Live. So, what did you kind of learn from the game on Sunday?
Yeah, no, like you said, tough game. I think the biggest learning for us is if we want to be able to compete against Durham, who played a really, really good level on Sunday, we need to step it up. in every element of our game. I think it really showed us that we have to be sort of pushing it almost more than 100%. And I think that that's something that starts obviously off the court. So yeah, I think going into, you know, the next training session that we have tonight, that's going to be the mentality that like we've seen the level that they can play, and if we want to keep up, we have to push.
And how do you reflect on the early part of the season? Obviously, you're 5 games in, obviously the loss on Sunday, but you've also played 3 5-setters. So there's been lots of up and downs for what's normally been a fairly consistent team. So what's Mark and the coaching staff been talking about, trying to help with that consistency level?
Yeah, I think it's sort of keeping our cool, staying calm. I think a lot of the games sometimes start a little bit panicky. You know, we have some new girls in the mix, and it takes some time to find the rhythm, and to just sort of like really get the harmony right. So, but I don't think it's something really worrying, you know, at the start of the season to be to not be consistent straight off the bat. I think that that's something that takes time when you have new players and you need to, you know, configure sort of everything. So I think that's been a big one, sort of staying calm, and keeping our level of the game. I think sometimes we're influenced a little bit too much by what's going on the other side of the net, and it kind of messes with how we play our game. But you know, when we're in training, we're keeping a super high level, and we train sometimes very differently from how we play, and so we're really trying to be able to translate what we do in training in game situations as well, which also hasn't been super easy with a lot of sort of free weekends in between games to like get in a good rhythm as well. So that's been a challenge too. Yeah, and also injuries and, you know, kind of people in and out. We've every set against Durham, for example, we started differently in terms of players. So that also is an additional challenge to finding our rhythm. But I think we definitely have the qualities to get there.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys are moving in the right direction. You know, you mentioned consistency a lot, and you know your own rhythms and playing to what you want instead of what your opponents are doing. So now that you've got 5 games under your belt and you've seen everybody really, what are you guys going to do based on what you've done so far to kind of take it to that next level for the rest of the season? Like, is there anything specific that you want to work on? Whether it's, I don't know, making sure everybody's always starting in the same position to keep that consistency, or figuring out a way to start a match in that calm mindset, which I know is difficult.
Yeah. I think one really big thing for us has been aggression, and I think maybe this is less related to consistency, but I think stats as well for a lot of our games have shown that our hitting percentage isn't as high as we want it to be. And I think that has to do with a lot of aggression and just taking the chances that you have, and using them to their fullest. So yeah, we saw that against Durham, right? If we're not being aggressive enough, it's not enough. It's a huge block, and we have to be pushing it, and we can't just sort of be giving easy balls over. And I think that is definitely a really big pointer for us right now.
Yeah, so almost trying to expand that toolbox a little bit, because if you've got a big block against you, it's not being aggressive. I completely agree with that, but you've got to be aggressive in a way that's still going to keep the ball in play, at least for you guys. Don't want to just put it out or into the net.
Yeah, or in the block.
Yes.
So let's dig a little bit into your history, Carla, because it's a little bit different to a lot of players in the Super League. Obviously, Luxembourg international, and obviously you spent a lot of time in the Netherlands, kind of the back end of your junior career into the start of your kind of senior career. So just talk about your journey and let people know the path, because it is very different to a lot of players in the Super League.
Yeah, I started playing volleyball in Luxembourg in high school, actually. It was just 2 friends of mine were like, super fun, come join the team. I tried first year, I was really bad, didn't make the team. And then the next year, I was like, okay, this is really fun. All my friends went to like sort of the tournament, the competition, and made the team. And from there on, sort of, yeah, progressed throughout high school in Luxembourg until I graduated and moved to the Netherlands, which was also a conscious choice because the Netherlands has a pretty good league, and I could combine it with studying well. And then I eventually worked my way up to the Eredivisie in the Netherlands, it's called, so the top league there, before coming to the UK sort of 2 seasons ago. Yeah, that's been the path. And when I was in Luxembourg, I started with the junior national team as well, which eventually became the senior national team, which I'm still doing, which is also a lot of fun. And that sort of happens in the summer mainly. We have our competitions, sometimes in the winter a little bit, like when we have off for club season. So that's been a bit of the journey.
Yeah, and obviously you got the gold medal in the Small States of Europe, I believe is the official name, championship this summer.
Yeah.
But you were doing that off the back of an injury. So just talk about the frustration of last year a little bit. I know we caught up before the Final Four. You were just getting back in time for Final Four. You're a little bit rusty. So just talk about kind of dealing with some of those injuries and kind of the mindset that had, and how the summer really helped you kind of build some momentum back into this season as well.
Yeah, so the most recent injury, I think, yeah, anyone you'll talk to will probably have a sort of a history of injuries, and if not, they're very lucky. But the most recent one was my ankle, very common one as well. So I fractured one of the bones in my ankle, and it took me around 3 months to get back on court. Initially, I also didn't even think it was that bad. You know, you have an ankle sprain and gets a little blue and you think, all right, 2 weeks and I'll be back. But a break is a little bit more serious. So yeah, I mean, of course, I think initially it's really frustrating because short term, you're like, I have these tournaments I want to play. I missed a national team tournament. You obviously miss important games, sort of the first half of the first part of the second half of the season. And then I worked my way to being fit again for the Final Four, but fit physically is also, you know, different from being fit and in your flow and in your rhythm to be, ready for a Final Four. So I think for me, I definitely, like you said, felt a little bit rusty just because, you know, 3 months of not playing, you have to work your way there again. So yeah, I think you always sort of have the little short-term frustrations are always there of like, oh, I'm missing this one game. But a big reminder is always like, okay, it's always better to miss that one game and to be fitter in the long run. And I had a more serious knee injury in the past, and you know, it took me over a year to get back from that. And so there you really have to just be driven by the long term, like, all right, you know, you want to be able to play later on to a good level, and you want to be able to, you know, beyond playing, also just do everything in your daily life without pain and complications. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's all really good stuff. And if you're a younger player or if you've never experienced an injury, all things to definitely listen to, because Carla, you're absolutely right. You're better to take, you know, an extra 2 weeks off or miss that one game to keep yourself going to the like longer term. You know, I'm a bit older now and I've had several serious injuries, and you know, taking that extra bit of time has helped me continue to play as I've gotten older. And it's just one of those, you know, you're so right, and it helps you as well, like mentally. You want to feel mentally ready. You want to have that trust back in your body, because it's something that you can lose. So if your physio gives you exercises because you've been injured, do the exercises.
Definitely do them. Don't get lazy.
And just talk about, for some of the younger athletes that might be listening, Carla, in terms of that dealing with expectation levels off the back of a timeout, whether it's 2 months, whether it's 9, 10, 12 months off a more serious injury. Just talk about what you've kind of learned from your experiences of kind of just tapering that back in and not expecting to be back to 100% in terms of playing level for a good time after injury.
Yeah, I think patience is a really big one. You know, being patient with your body. It's gonna take the time it needs, and usually, if you're pushing it over the edge, you're only doing sort of harm. So, I think the older you get, the more you get to know your body as well, and really learning to listen to those signals of, you know, what's too far, what's not. And sometimes that's really hard because you have health professionals who can give you advice, and they can sort of tell you, all right, you need to take a break for this long. But they'll never be able to really feel what you feel in that moment. So I think it's a really big skill getting to know your body and understanding what is too far for me, what is too much for me, and really respecting your own boundaries in that. And then when you are getting back to playing again, I think as soon as you can show yourself, okay, I can, if it's an ankle sprain you're getting back from, I can jump and land safely, and my physio did say it's safe to do this. So, once you try it a few times and once you've proven to yourself like it works, I can do that, then the trust sort of builds. And then before you know it as well, you're in the game and there's a rally going on and you're not even thinking about your foot. You're just thinking about how can I score the next point. So it can go really quickly. But yeah, definitely be patient with yourself, listen to your body. And at the end of the day, it really does go faster than you think.
Yeah, for sure. So now we'll kind of talk about a bit of why we brought you on this week, and it's something I obviously we caught up at King and Queen of the Court at the weekend. We'll talk about that at the back end, but just before a double header a couple of weeks ago, you hadn't had much volleyball because you were off adventuring. So tell us about the process of going to climb Kilimanjaro.
Yeah, it was amazing. You're right. I did take some time off volleyball, but it was definitely worthwhile. I mean, not often have I done that in the past years since I've played volleyball. Take such an extended period out of the season. But I did just graduate my master's, and do have sort of a little bit more freedom and wiggle room. And my father is actually from Kenya, and I was planning a trip to Kenya. And ever since I was a little girl, we would sort of pass Kilimanjaro on the way to the coast of Kenya. And I always thought like, oh, it must be so cool to go up there. And then, the older you get, you hear people going up, and now felt just like a super nice time to go and do it. I think that it's really as simple as that. I thought that would be fun, and I just did it. And it was all very last minute. The people who were close to me will know that I was stressing a little bit because my passport was expiring, and then obviously visa things, and I had to get all the gear, and it was like a little bit stressed towards the end, but I think that made it all the more fun. And yeah, it was 8 days of amazing scenery, great people. You're completely off the grid, so it was really a nice sort of reflection moment. And yeah, beautiful peak.
Amazing. Really, really cool. Just because this is something that takes a lot of like mental effort as well as physical effort. Did you learn anything about yourself or about how you think about things when you were doing the preparation or actually climbing that you think translate to volleyball or sports in general?
Yeah, it's funny that you asked, because now I think it was definitely one of the hardest things that I've done, especially like the ascent. You sort of leave at midnight, it's cold, it's dark, it's windy, and you have to go 6 hours head down. It's not really that fun when you're doing that part. It's fun when you get to the top, and like part of the other parts are fun when it's pretty and stuff, but the ascent night, I'll be honest, like I didn't have that much fun. But it's worth it when you get to the top, and sometimes you have to sort of push through that hard period. And I think the same with anything, right? Sometimes you got to push through it. And at the end, I was like so overwhelmed because it was really beautiful, but I was also just really proud of like, whoa, I just was really struggling like 4 hours ago on this mountain, but I did it and I'm here. And like, you can do hard things. And ever since I've been back, and I've had moments where I'm like, I don't know, maybe I'm doing a hard workout or something is difficult, and then I'll ask myself, I'll be like, well, is this as difficult as the ascent night of Kilimanjaro? And I'll be like, probably not. And then it's like, I did that, so I can do other things. And yeah, I think your mind sort of can give up far earlier than your body. And so I think with a lot of sports related things, sometimes if you think, physically something feels really hard, a lot of the time it's like if you can push through in your mind, your body will follow. So I think with volleyball, that's huge as well, because it's such a mental game. And so sometimes you got to just get yourself out of that. It's hard now because yes, it's hard now, but it's going to be really worth it later.
Yeah. Yeah, you've got to look at what that end goal is and picture yourself being there. So
Yeah.
incredible.
And,
Yeah,
and just talk
definitely.
about the views at the top, because I don't think there's many people that are listening to this podcast are probably going to be brave enough to experience it. So I know we chatted on Friday about it, but just talk about the reward at the end of it.
Yeah, it was stunning. So you reach the peak at sunrise, and I mean, you're above the clouds, and you can almost sort of see that the Earth is round. There's a really pretty glacier at the top. It was full moon on our ascent night as well. So on one side you have sort of the sun rising, on the other side you have the moon setting, and yeah, it's hard to sort of describe how beautiful it is. And even like the video that I took, I'm looking at it, and I'm like, yeah, you don't really capture it. And um, yeah, I think the pride is a really big thing. Like it's really beautiful, but you really are like, whoa, I just did something really, really, really hard. And that gives you a really good feeling.
And the big one, does this whet your appetite to maybe find a different mountain and go a little bit higher at some point?
Definitely. I think I'm not necessarily don't need to go much higher, but I think a different mountain would be amazing, because I thought the whole process of it was also really nice. I mean, I say I didn't really enjoy the ascent night, but there were 6 whole days before that where you were making your way up, so I really liked that. And I studied sustainability science. I work in the sustainability sector, and I really have an appreciation for our environment. So it was really nice being so sort of yeah, surrounded by that. And I'll definitely be doing some more treks in the future for sure.
Well, obviously, we talked about it, so we'll briefly touch upon it. Obviously, you were there, I was there at the weekend. Just how different was it to see Crystal Palace, the court you played on about 6 months ago at Final Four, where you're going to play in a couple of weeks as well, have some sand on it at the weekend?
Yeah, so good. I loved it. I thought it was a great event. Really, really nice turnout of people. English teams did really well. And yeah, I think it's cool because it gives you a taste of, what a volleyball event can be like. No matter where and what, like, we know Crystal Palace, we've had it in the Final Four and in different settings. And now we saw it, with a little bit of a different face. It was, maybe a bit louder than during the Final Four and things like that. So, yeah, you want more of that, right? And you're like, it would be nice to, play yourself in that sort of atmosphere. So yeah, it was great to see. Loads of fun. I really love the way that they make the event so energetic, and with the music, and the whole crowd is sort of super engaged. So had a good time.
And a challenge now to the London fan base to come out in a couple of weeks for the Super
Yeah.
League Live. Obviously, yourself and Lionheart's playing, and we've got Giants Mallory on the men's side. So a bit of a challenge to even probably not as many people, but it'll be important to try and get the London volleyball community back out and having another big atmosphere.
For sure. Yeah, it'd be great to see a lot of people there.
Well, we're going to about wrap up, but before we do, Carla, we like to have a little rapid fire timeout tension with all our guests. So Jess is going to just fire off some questions and just say the first thing that goes into your mind.
Okay.
Jess?
You ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Breakfast or dinner?
Breakfast.
Summer or winter?
Summer.
Attack or defense?
What
Attack.
would Mark like me to say?
Attack, because we need
How
more of
about
that.
and a fun one, just because you were talking about Kilimanjaro, mountains or beach?
Oh, I actually think mountains.
Fair.
Maybe a
Tea
little
or
bit
coffee?
influenced. Tea.
Cats or
Definitely.
dogs?
Tea. Cats, but I am allergic to them, but I say cats.
Uphill or downhill?
Uphill. It's easier on the knees.
And nice. Last one, blocking or killing?
killing.
There we go.
Yeah.
Easier to take 6 days going uphill than 2 days downhill.
Yeah. Much more fun as well. The uphill is much more fun than the downhill.
Well, Carla, we appreciate you popping on and catching us up on your trip. I'm glad you had a great time, and we'll see you at Crystal Palace in a couple of weeks for the Super League Live.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
So great to hear and get some insight from Carla Mulli of Team SideOut. And obviously, Jess talked about just before we spoke to Carla, obviously a big weekend for Durham women. You've already kind of made your statement, though. Is there a way anyone can catch Durham? They've now completed that road trip into London. Obviously, just got a couple more trips into the Midlands and obviously the Newcastle derby as well. But what could you see affecting this Durham team potentially not topping the Mari Women's Super League?
Oh, it would have to be somebody coming out with something really creative, because I think defensively, specifically with the block, they're so strong. But if somebody can figure out a way to, consistently block or um, put off like really high hands touches that are, miles behind the court by the time they land. If Durham can't adjust to that, that would be the only thing I could really think of. Because even like service reception, they're great. They're just, I think they're strongest in the league right this second.
So that's one team top of the league. And then we've got to talk about another, maybe not quite reaching the heights of first place, but up to third place all of a sudden, having just played 2 games prior to this weekend, Jess. As we said in the recap, a huge weekend for Sam Shenton and the Newcastle Knights men, up to third place in the league, and they've got games in hand on teams around them. So how big a statement weekend do you think this was for the Knights?
I think this was an incredible weekend for them. So they've come out, they've got 5 points. They beat London Giants. And it's put them, you mentioned they've got games in hand. So Mallory and London Giants are ahead of them in the table. Well, they've both played 6 matches, and Newcastle have only played 4. So they don't have 1 game in hand, they have 2. So they're in an excellent position now. If they can capitalize on this and continue to play at the level that they played this weekend just gone. So then, they will cement themselves back into the Final Four for this season.
Yeah, I think so. And I think obviously it's a long way to go, but you also look at what's below them. Obviously, they're technically a point clear of Essex and Nottingham. But again, 2 games less played than Nottingham will be. Nottingham, as we've said all season long, have played a really tough schedule so far. Obviously, a game in hand on the Essex Rebels as well. But then the other teams that played less games, Durham, Richmond, are in and around that team. They've already got a 6-point gap with, and they go to Richmond this week. So suddenly, if you win that, you're not quite safe from that relegation scrap, but all your planning going into Christmas is now looking the other end, and you're looking up, not behind you. And that psychologically could have such a big impact.
Yeah, it can. Sometimes just having like 1 or 2 good performances will almost, springboard you into more good performances because you're in the right headspace just naturally.
And on the Dynamic Men's Super League, it's a big weekend because there is no games this week in the Mari Women's Super League, but 5 games if you include a Tuesday contest next week on the men's side. Obviously, that Durham Leeds game will happen while we record, so still got to figure out how we break that one down. But it is a huge week coming up for Durham, Jess. They've got that Tuesday night game against Leeds at home, but they've also got a road trip down to the capital this weekend on Saturday. They'll take on the Richmond Docklands on Sunday. They'll have a cup rematch with the London Giants. So is this a week that could make or break Durham's season? Obviously, they've only played the 3 games, so this will take them to 6. And we don't know the status of Sean McQuiggan yet, and if he will play. We thought there's a chance he might be back in December. It might be January. But if they get to 6 games and maybe they go 1 and 2 over these 3 games on 5-6 points at Christmas, it's going to be a big ask to get back up into those top 4 spots potentially.
Yeah, completely agree. And, I think we spoke about this, not last week because I wasn't here, but the week before then, we did talk about this. If Durham are reliant on their second half of the season for matches to make it into the Final Four, will they have enough points within that short space of time? So completely agree with you. I think if they finish this weekend having played 6 and they pick up, say, 1 win and 2 losses, as you mentioned, I think they're really going to struggle to not be in the playoff place. There's only one safe non-Final Four spot. It's a small table. There's a small number of matches. You have to capitalize on the points. So if they can come out of this weekend with, 5 points or 6 points, that puts them in a much better position, because then they could still be looking towards, the bottom half of that Final Four, or potentially just landing in the 5th place spot, so that they've, kind of built on things this season and can focus on making it to Final Four next year. I know that's not the aim that they've got, but I don't think we've seen enough of them to say definitively where they're going to land.
No, but I think you've also got the counter argument. If you go down and you beat Richmond and pick up 3 points, if you compete, maybe even take just a set off Giants, show signs of progress, right, compared to the cup game, you then go beat Leeds, who, yes, if you look at the league table, you should beat, but we know how tricky this Leeds team have been, and they've started to really get better. We don't know, potentially, maybe Nelson's back by a week today, as we record on Tuesday the 9th. So suddenly, if you can come through that and you come up with 6 points, it is very different. So it is, I think, a super important weekend for Ross Enfield's side, and it'll be interesting to see what they come up with as adjustments on the blocking end, particularly because we know if that Durham team can block, we talked about it with the women's team, that's where they've got a real advantage with that length at the net.
Yeah, completely agree.
And obviously, we talked about that Durham-Richmond game. Another game for Richmond as well. They've got the Newcastle Knights coming down, trying to stem that Knights momentum from the big double-header weekend. So as much as it's important for Durham, Jess, is this make or break for Richmond? A lot of the home schedule kind of being played this weekend with Durham and Newcastle, 2 teams that looking forward. And again, we said it with Durham, if you don't win, you're looking like the gap's a long way. If you suddenly lose to Durham and Newcastle, how could Richmond potentially get out of the bottom 2?
Yeah, and I think this is an interesting one, because Richmond have been relying on Soldikov so much over the last few weeks. Are Newcastle and Durham going to go in with a focus of trying to shut him down no matter how they have to do it? And then Richmond have no other options because they've not been, trying new things? Or is Soldikov, strong enough that he's still going to make it through no matter what? So you get to go on another 6-point ace run. So we'll just have to wait and see. But I do think it is make or break. I think Richmond and Durham particularly are under the pressure for this weekend and, the week upcoming. And it's just a question of what happens with what's going on with them.
Yeah, and the other team with the doubleheader are, well, not doubleheader, but 2 games are Leeds Gorse. They will travel to Nottingham on the Saturday, and then, of course, up to Durham on the Tuesday night. So another chance for Leeds to move forward, and obviously still not over for relegation. It's only the bottom 1 that goes down. So if they can pick up a couple of results and make progress, that'll be delightful for Pete Mikowski. We know that Leeds team is all about performance and keep on growing, so we'll see what that looks like. So a quick reminder of the game Saturday. It is Leeds versus Nottingham at 12:30. Oh, sorry. Nottingham Leeds at 4 o'clock, one way around, and Richmond Durham at 4:30 on Sunday. Richmond Newcastle 12:45. London Giants Durham at 4 p.m. And then that Tuesday night encounter up in the northeast, Durham and Leeds, is a 7:30 first serve as the women put their feet up and get ready for a couple of games before the Christmas break. So on the Super League side, that will do it, Jess, but we'll be remiss if we didn't quite finish with the roundup of what happened at the Crystal Palace National Sports Centre over the weekend. I know you couldn't make it down, but King and Queen of the Court, I know you've seen the social clips. We may also have seen point of the season with the bicycle kick for the Scottish duo of Ben McHardy and Ewan Fraser. But obviously from afar, I'll touch on it in a second. What were your impressions of what you saw at Crystal Palace?
I mean, speaking in a grander sense than just this one tournament, I think having this level of competition and engagement in volleyball in the UK is such a massive step forward. And we've seen it with the socials. We see it with, the live stuff, Super League, and now with this, obviously it's a slightly different setup. But to continue to build engagement and that fan base here in the UK is so exciting. It really, really makes me, I don't know how else to say it other than I'm just genuinely excited about this for the future of volleyball in the UK, because it's it's growing every day, and people are passionate about it, and it's showing. So what more could you ask for?
Yeah, no. First of all, testament to the sport work team that put King and Queen of the Court on. It was a sensationally well-run event. A lot of fun. But you said the crowd got it, and I think that was my biggest takeaway. Some of it may have been alcohol inspired. I'm not going to name names on the podcast and out anyone in particular, but a certain beach volleyball person, you know who you are. But when Freddie and Isa made the final, it definitely turned into a bit of a home court. Every time they got to the King's End, it was cheered. And obviously some support for the other teams that didn't quite make the finals. Obviously, I know the Bayos were dealing with a couple of niggles injury-wise off the back of the world champs, so they couldn't quite perform at their best, but I know they enjoyed their time in London as well. But yeah, it was a terrific couple of days, some drama. As we said, maybe point of the season. If you haven't seen that, head to VE and King and Queen of the Court socials to find the dramatic save by Ewan Fraser that ends up a couple of touches later into a bicycle kick over the net by his teammate on touch number 3, Ben McHardy, that had everyone's jaws on the floor. The only difference was he didn't quite win the point, but at that point, I don't think anyone in the venue really cared because we saw something special. But also, yeah, big congrats to Freddie and Isa for the bronze medal. Not the easiest thing to do at King and Queen of the Court with some of the talent we had on Shane on scene. And now we've just got to get all the sand out of Crystal Palace, which I'm not envious about.
Yeah, it's nice to not have to be involved in that bit, right?
Yeah, and there's a small chance we may see some sand particles when we get there in a couple of weeks' time for Super League Live. But that will wrap it up for a slightly longer but most definitely fun episode of the Time Out podcast. We'll be back next week to review what's happened in the Dynamic Men's Super League and then preview the last week of action before Christmas, including what is going to be our final Super League Live of 2025, as we'll head to the aforementioned Crystal Palace National Sports Centre for Team SideOut Polonia versus Lionhearts Venarius and the top of the table clash between the London Giants and the Mallow Eagles. We'll see you next week. And thank you as ever for joining us. And make sure you subscribe on socials, VE Super League, and of course the Spotify account for this podcast.
You've been listening to the Super League